All right, this video is for agency owners who run a 6, 7, maybe even 8-figure agency and who are living the dream life on paper, but secretly still have to admit that their finances make 0 sense to them. And so, if that is you, then this video will be your saving grace. So, as a quick intro, I run a CFO agency where we work exclusively with agencies in this range. And so for this video, I've broken down exactly how 99% of the agencies we get to work with are structured and why scaling always feels so chaotic and harder than it should if you don't have the right information like this available to you. So this is the exact framework that we're using to help our clients take home more profit and give them real visibility in what is going on. So let's get right into it. And here we are, a big colorful flowchart, because who said finance couldn't be pretty as well. But what we're gonna do is just run you through this exact framework and all the steps in here. And as we'll go through this, I guarantee that you will start to realize why your finances make no sense and what the exact missing pieces are that are currently not visible in your agency and that are used to tie everything together. And so we're gonna start it up and work our way down, and then we'll touch on all the things you need to know to get the visibility, know why your profits might be leaking, or just why it feels so hard to keep everything together as you're scaling beyond the 6 figures. And so starting at the top, very basic, the North Star. Everyone should have that goal. If you don't know what you're trying to get to, you'll never get there. So whether this is to have a lifestyle agency, whether this is to go for high growth, or whether you might want to even sell the agency one day, this is ultimately what you're aiming for, and all your decisions need to be aligned to this. So if you don't even have the North Star, don't even continue watching this, as nothing will make sense here, as the nuances won't really apply to you if you don't know how to apply them. But let's assume you have the North Star. Let's maybe assume you're going for this high growth agency. Let's dig in. So what most agency owners are currently looking at when it comes to the finances are these three buckets. You have your clients. Maybe you're selling some products on the side, you have some affiliate partners, but ultimately an agency, it's all about the clients you have. Then the second bucket are the people you have, right? You have a team that delivers the service for your clients, and you have a more support team that's more on the operational side maybe, but an agency is just a collection of people who deliver a service to the clients. Should be straightforward enough. And then there's also a more operational part, about running any business. So this includes even your sales and marketing, but also your software. Maybe you have even an office somewhere, any other expenses, fees, you name it. That's the third bucket of the agency. So you got clients that are coming in, people who deliver, and then the operations that enable the people to deliver the service for the clients. This should be straightforward enough. I doubt you'll have any questions if you're already scaled beyond 6 figures in revenue. Now, just to add a little bit more flavor to these buckets, when you're looking at clients, you're dealing with a certain niche or ICP that you're delivering to. You have a clear offer and you have a price for this offer. All of this results in money coming in. Straightforward enough. For the people, you're dealing with a fulfillment team. You might have a sales team, you have an admin team, and you might even have a management team already. These are just salaries. Maybe you have some bonuses that are being paid or some performance fees. Either way, that will all just result in money going out. Same for the operations. You might be running ads, you might have other marketing costs, money going out. All your software, training, general expenses, all is money going out. And so this is the basics of running an agency. This is where you probably are already at. However, this is also where most of the agencies we see stop. And so if your finances make no sense, then you are probably just looking at these flows, this whole top layer here. You can see the money coming in. Maybe you have some way to kind of track a need, or maybe it's you're just looking at your Stripe subscriptions. Maybe you have a tracker somewhere You're keeping some track of all the clients you have, the money that's supposed to come in, but as you again scale beyond these 6 7 figure range, you'll start to see, like, maybe have some quarterly deals that pay up front. Some clients are delayed, some refunds happens. So this can already get quite blurry, and it's not just as simple as, a handful of clients pay you very nicely every month on the same date. This can already become very messy. And so if you're just looking at your bank account or maybe some spreadsheet, this will start to break. Same for your money going out. Most of the time you have a little bit more control over when to pay, but there's still like different, salary increases that might come up, new hires, new things that didn't work out, any unexpected tax bills that might be coming up, anything that just happened throughout the month results in this money going out. And if all you do is just check your bank account and just see your latest transactions, you'll never truly understand where it's all going. And all these one-off things that just keep on happening are just stacking up, and everything will just require you to spend more and more money. Stuff is rarely getting cheaper. And so if, this is the current view that you have, you will fall behind. And the competitors that are properly watching what is going on and they have a way to keep track of it, they will outcompete you, because they can simply put their resources to better use in their agency, and they won't get stuck with any unexpected things that might put them in an overextended situation where they now can't afford to make a new hire, or they're unsure and they have this decision fatigue or analysis paralysis. So they don't act. That is because there's no visibility if you're just looking at money in and money out. Now, that's where you might be. What is the solution? That's what we get into here. So, because every transaction that happens here, all the money that comes in, all the money that goes out, this is data. So this data needs to be captured. One, you need bookkeeping. Very simple. QuickBooks or Xero. Get a bookkeeper, not much, usually between two, maybe at most $700 a month. You get a good bookkeeper who records all your transactions, says exactly what this money in is for, which client it is for, which service it is for. So you have a very neat view month by month what's going on. Same for all the expenses. Everything gets stacked properly. You have a clear history of what has gone out. When did it go out? Has it been increasing? Is it decreasing? That's what you need to capture in good bookkeeping software. At the same time, there's a lot of data that gets, that can be captured here. All your clients, how long are they staying with you? When are they leaving? Are you upselling them? Which people are working on the clients? Who's getting better results? Is churn evenly spread across the team? Is the sales team actually performing? Are they hitting their KPIs? Same for the marketing. Are you hitting your budget? Is your ROAS where you need it to be? How many emails are you sending? All of these movements here come with data. And if you don't capture that data, you'll never know if you're actually improving or if you're just doing work for the sake of doing work. And so that is what you need to capture. The actual transactions, what they are, and the data that comes with the work around these transactions. Now, that is all fun and games to track that. But one, you're going to have too much information to know what to do with as the founder. That's why you need KPIs. You need to find just a handful of clear metrics that actually indicate what the performance is looking like. And this is different for every agency. For some, it might be churn. For others, it might be sales. Others, it might be anything on the delivery side. So this really depends on your agency and your goal, but you need to have a way to quickly make sense of this data so you as the founder can just glance at, maybe it's a dashboard, maybe it's a report you get, and you can then see if you're on the right track or if you need to change something. Very important to now turn this data into something you can use. And all of that is done in a financial model. So not just a basic P&L like you might get from a bookkeeper. No, we're talking about an actual financial model where you can capture all your clients, all your people, all your expenses. You can see all this data that we talked about, when they started, when they ended, what the average invoice is. This is the type of stuff you need to have in an organized way. I've seen dozens of models that agencies are currently using, which are just some hack together spreadsheets where it probably hasn't been properly touched in months, and just only like sometimes when there's a little bit of time they make some updates to it, but truthfully they couldn't tell themselves even what they're doing. And so if you don't have a nice, neat financial model that captures all of this, you'll just always be stuck still guessing. So that is the missing piece, like a way to capture all of this information. But information is only useful if it actually influences your actions. And so just capturing this is not going to do anything for you unless you actually try to use it for the betterment of yourself and your agency and for the progression towards your goals. And that's where the strategy part comes in. And so again, if your finances make 0 sense to you, it is probably because 1, you're not capturing the information that you need to capture, and 2, you don't have a process to turn this information into better strategy and better decisions. And so that's what these steps are for. So to quickly run through them, right? We have the financial model. This now helps you determine the optimal client strategy. From this information, we can see what's the lifetime value, what's the churn, what's the profitability per client. We can even spread this out over the different ICPs that we have, over the different offers that we have, over different pricing categories. And so now with this, we can see exactly where we need to put our time and our resources to make more money and to keep growing. Like that might be making a new initiative to reduce churn. Maybe it will be focusing on the services with the highest lifetime value. Maybe it is indeed cutting out some of the bad clients. If you don't have this data, you'll just keep doing what you think is right, which might not be backed by data. And you can just keep running in circles, running on the treadmill, trying to replace bad clients, trying to deliver for unprofitable clients. And that's why you get stuck. So again, if it makes no sense, track the right data so you know what to act. That applies for all these categories. Second, the cash strategy. Most agencies don't have significant cash flow issues because you should be profitable as an agency unless you may be doing big enterprise deals, and it can be a bit trickier. But still, profits should be prioritized, and that will then result in more cash. Now, still, cash is something that should be managed. Maybe especially if you're taking more money out of the business, you need to be paying attention to this. So you want to be tracking your cash runway and the access to capital that you have. Again, this is all data. Just looking at your bank account is not going to tell you this. Your bank account will only say what you currently have. It will say nothing about what expenses are coming up. So that's what this is about. You need to know that if anything goes wrong on the money inside, that the money outside is not going to put you out of business. So any big tax bills, any big expected drawings, any big hires that are coming up, you need to know how this influences your runway, so you have that peace of mind and visibility that you're not going broke. Then moving on to the people side, this is by far your biggest expense if you run an agency. So you can't just be paying people thousands and not even approach it in a way that you can see if they're performing or not. So when we're talking about finance and we're talking about people, we're talking about capacity and utilization, we're talking about salaries and bonuses, and we're talking about having a clear hiring plan. You can't always be hiring too early or hiring too late. This might cost you thousands. Mishires are very expensive, and so you want to have a way to see if your current team is at capacity, how well you're utilizing them, if they're working on the right projects, if they're delivering stuff on time, what KPIs they should be hitting. And so that everything is actually working and you're not just putting more people in a system that is broken. So very important, track this information so you can know if you need to make big decisions around your people. And then to quickly go through these others, operational strategy, you want to be able to relatively accurately predict where you're going to be in the next few weeks. So that's what you're looking at here. We're looking at budgeting and forecasting and margins and KPIs. Most of the expenses are predictable. So predict them. If you know exactly how much money is going out over the coming weeks, you can sleep at peace knowing that you're in a good spot, and now you have a way to judge whether new investments are actually right for this moment in time and whether you're going to get an ROI on them, and if you are actually getting an ROI on the existing investments that you have. So very important, capture this data. Don't just spend money because the money is there, but actually have a plan, make sure it fits in your budget, and you can then always sleep at night knowing that your money is working for you and you're not just spending on random things just because it's there. And lastly, on the sales strategy, this is what most agencies don't prioritize enough, in my opinion. Sales are not just happening themselves. The top agencies we work with, they have very, very strict and dialed in sales funnels and a very good sales process. They are tracking what their CAC is. They're tracking which channels are working. They're checking what upsells can be done and when is a good time to upsell their current clients. And they can tell you this information like it's like they know it from the back of their hand. So very important. If you're investing in sales, make sure you know if it's actually paying off. Don't just put a couple thousand into ads just because you have a couple thousand to spare. Make sure you're getting that ROI. Make sure you know which channels are working and what you should prioritize. And so, as you can probably see at this point, if you focus on all of these elements and you're constantly making sure it's dialed in, that will result into more profits. If you make sure your team is at the right kind of utilization, so you haven't overhired, you haven't underhired, that will help you be more profitable. If you're making sure you're sticking to your budgets, you're not just overspending, again, more profitable. If you optimize for your clients, drop some of the bad ones, maybe try and upsell the bad ones, focus on the ones that are actually paying you the most, again, more profits. And then these profits can go to your North Star, whether that's to have a lifestyle agency, a high growth agency, or to actually sell the business. And this whole thing becomes a cycle, because now again, based on this information, you might decide to change your ICP, or you might decide to change your pricing, which will again result in more money coming in, will result in more data that is being tracked in your model. And then this again will reinforce either decisions you have to make, it will change which clients are now the most profitable, and everything keeps changing. So this is a constant process of looking at the right things, capturing the data, knowing how to read it, and actually acting on it. If you do that, I have no doubt you will come out of this knowing exactly what is working in your agency, what needs improvements, and how the finances actually work, which will result in more profit. So if you have any questions on this, feel free to message me. I'll have my stuff in the description here. But take some time to try and map this out for your agency. See where you might be having any bottlenecks, where some of the information is lost, what information you're not looking at, but that you should. And I'm sure if you do that, you will notice an immediate impact in the clarity that you have and hopefully in some of the decisions that you're making on a daily basis. All right, signing out.